Team, we still have a lot of issues at our southern border that we have to address. That's something that you haven't heard as much about in the news. I want to make sure we keep an eye on that. You know, we cover it frequently here on the show. And with that in mind, we now bring you Deputy Chief of U.S. Border Patrol, Raul Ortiz. Chief Ortiz, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you for having me, Buck. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to talk a little bit about what's going on the southern border, and hopefully the northern border also.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, Chief, what are we seeing right now? Let's just start with the nuts and bolts, if you will, of securing the border. How are we doing with apprehensions? What do the numbers look like? And how are we doing with seizures of narcotics?
Yeah, so with respect to the apprehensions, all right, it's a different population than we were experiencing this past year. Just to give you a little background, I've spent the last 6.5 years along the southwest border, specifically in South Texas. And so I transitioned up to headquarters about 6 months ago. And right after I got here, of course, COVID hit early March. And so what we've been experiencing since that time has really been a change in the population that we're see coming across the southwest border specifically. Back last year and previously, we were seeing a lot of family units and kids. We're not seeing that same population anymore. About 90% of the people that we see come across the southwest border are single adults, and most of them are from Mexico. Prior to this, we saw a lot of individuals from the Northern Triangle countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And then, of course, we saw family units and unaccompanied children crossing. What we've seen now is predominantly Mexican citizens, single adult males, and it really goes back to almost what we saw when I first started 29 years ago. This economic migrant trying to get to the U.S. in pursuit of a better way of life.
And how has it been for your agents at the border when it comes to COVID protection? Have you seen a lot of cases, and are you dealing with a lot of illegal crossings from Mexico of people who are either COVID positive themselves or seeking care for COVID?
Yeah, so a little bit of all of that. Unfortunately, in the Border Patrol, we've lost 3 agents in the line of duty to COVID, and collectively CBP has lost over 10 officers. And so that certainly is awfully concerning to our workforce when you think about the threats and the environments we face each and every day. With respect to the migrant population that's coming across, specifically in between the ports of entry, we've seen an increase of COVID cases, and then we've seen an increase of our own personnel being susceptible to COVID. At one point, just as these communities along the southwest border started to see an uptick, we started to see an uptick. And so we have done some things to put some to figure out how to fix that, right? We've got PPE in place, personal protective equipment for our agents, and then we've also taken some engineering controls so to try and mitigate those issues for our frontline agents. And so what we've seen over the last probably 2 to 3 weeks is a bit of a plateau of the cases that our agents are experiencing, but certainly it's awfully concerning. I grew up on the southwest border. I've got family there. And so we've seen South Texas, El Paso, San Diego, Arizona, those places start to see an uptick in cases amongst the population in the communities. And we certainly don't want to add an additional burden on those health resources, those medical facilities that exist there. And so what we've done is we've been able to exercise some CDC authorities. We call this Title 42. And what we're doing is we're expelling people pretty much right after we apprehend them. And so if you're from Mexico, or if you're from Central America, we try and get you back to your home country as quickly as possible, minimizing the risk to our employees as well as to the communities.
Speaking to Deputy Chief of U.S. Border Patrol, Raul Ortiz. Chief, have you seen a big uptick in rescues that Border Patrol has had to do? Because I know we're in the hot summer months here, and that can be a more dangerous time for people to try to cross, especially if they get caught out in open territory and don't bring enough supplies with them, trying to cross illegally. But obviously the humanitarian mission then kicks in. How's that been going?
Yeah, so fortunately, a lot of the numbers are trending in the right direction. We've had an uptick in rescues, but we've also seen our deaths that people find themselves in distress out in these remote areas, those numbers have started to go down. And so what we're doing is we're making sure that we have our search and rescue teams out there, especially as you see these extreme heat conditions exist in along the southwest border. In fact, I was just in Yuma, Arizona a few days ago when it was 116 degrees, and our agents are out there patrolling 24/7. So when we get a distress call, and usually it's a 911 call, our agents are pretty quick, along with our Air Marine partners, to get out to those individuals and try and put them in a situation where they are no longer in distress. So I think our agents are doing a pretty good job with respect to the number of rescues we've made. We're going to continue to try and focus on ensuring our search and rescue teams are in these high-risk areas so that way we can respond quickly. You asked me earlier about the narcotics, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. One of the things we've seen in between the ports of entry is an uptick in narcotic seizures almost across the board. I think with respect to one category, heroin, we haven't seen an awful lot of heroin trafficked in between the ports of entry. But with respect to marijuana, methamphetamines, fentanyl, and cocaine, all of those seizure numbers are up. And so we continue to try and make sure we push our agents in those areas where these cartels and these transnational criminal organizations are trying to do everything they can to get this illicit cargo across. And so when you're dealing with these economic migrants who aren't turning themselves in, but actually trying to get away from our officers each and every day, as well as the narcotics threat, the weapons that are going southbound, money that's going southbound, it's an all hands on deck. We've got a tremendous workforce out there that's focused both on the southwest border as well as the northern border. I've got 2,000 agents up on the northern border that are doing a tremendous job for us.
Yeah, Chief Ortiz, can you tell us, we usually focus on, obviously because of numbers and manpower and resources, focus on the fight to secure the southern border and make sure that law and order is the order of the day down there. What's going on with the northern border mission, given that isn't Canada not allowing traffic from America right now? There are restrictions because of COVID specifically.
Yeah, so, both on the southern border and the northern border, we've got restrictions limited to essential travel. And so what that I think has forced people to do is to try and cross illegally in between the ports of entry. And this is also occurring on the northern border. And so we've got a little over 2,000 Border Patrol agents working up there. And the northern border is much larger than the 2,000 miles we face on the southern border. And they don't have the technology, the infrastructure, the wall system, and the access that we have on the southern border. So those agents are stretched very, very thin. But I will tell you that we've seen some successes, especially in sectors like Swanton Sector, Vermont, up in Blaine Sector. And we continue to try and increase our footprint as much as we possibly can. And then we work very collaboratively with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as well as the Customs Border Service organization up there, agency. We're doing great partnerships. We communicate with them weekly to ensure that we're sharing information and intelligence on the common threats that we face on both sides of the border.
And Chief Ortiz, before I let you go, I also need an update from you, if you would, please, on the wall, both how it has helped so far, the sections of it that have been built, and where are we seeing new wall construction? How much of it? I mean, bring us up to speed on all things wall at our southern border.
Yeah, so far we've built about 298 miles of border wall along the southwest border. And we've got construction projects going on in South Texas, Arizona. I just mentioned I was in Yuma. We've got several projects going on there, Tucson, Arizona, San Diego, California, El Paso. And so we've got a tremendous partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as our own organization, and certainly getting tremendous support from the administration to ensure that our agents have a wall system. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, but it isn't just a physical barrier. It's the technology that comes along with it. It's the underground sensors that come along, and then, of course, the access. In some areas, there isn't a patrol road that the agents can drive east or west, laterally on, or north and south, depending on where you're at. And so what this wall system will do is give our agents access to the immediate border area to be able to respond as soon as we have an incursion. And so we want to be able to queue. We want to be able to have the situational awareness of what's happening out there. And what we're starting to see as we build between 10 and 11 miles a week is that situational awareness is expanding. And so as we start to see more infrastructure built, we're going to move our agents to where the greatest threat is. And I am very, very pleased with the amount of progress we've made over the last probably year and a half with respect to the wall system. I was around back in 2006 when we built the initial, 670 miles of border wall. And I can tell you that what we're doing now is going to have a tremendous impact on border security leading into the future.
Deputy Chief of U.S. Border Patrol, Raul Ortiz. Chief, really appreciate you making the time. Thanks for bringing us all of your insight.
Hey, thank you, Buck. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Big victory in a primary down in Florida for a friend of mine, friend of the show, Anna Paulina Luna. She is running in the 13th Congressional. She's an Air Force veteran. She is down in the Tampa, Florida area, and she joins now to tell us about all the things going on. What's up, Anna? How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me back. It's been a transition from, I think, being in commentating to now running for office. So it's been a great experience.
So to tell everybody, I mean, I know it's not over yet, but you have what would have been considered, I guess, an improbable primary victory. How did it go down? Tell us about how you got to this point, because you're the Trump supporting candidate in your zone. So what's going on?
So basically, long story short, I declared my candidacy in September last year, but it was already a pretty crowded Republican primary. And I think that a lot of people looked at me, they said, she's not from Washington, D.C., she's younger, she was in the military, and, she did the commentating circuit, but she really doesn't have a shot. And what I really proved is not only do the people in general want non-establishment candidates, but really there is the power of hard work and fundraising. And imagine that, right? The American dream is hard work and you become successful. And that's really what this campaign was. I mean, I started with nothing. I started with one person really on my staff. And today we've raised over $1.1 million on small dollar donations. And that's a huge deal. My average donation is only $20. So as where we were seeing, some other candidates that were funded really by the corporate interest, the corporate PAC money, we were not. And I can tell you that made all the difference, especially in the general. I was going door to door up until really 6:30 the night of the election. And by 7:30, I wasn't even fully at my election party. And I had people calling me saying, you won. There's no way that they can close the gap. You're the winner. And to hear that, to realize that the hard work paid off like that, it was very, 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 a very happy time for me.
So what led you to get into this race, and what would you want to do? I mean, how are you differentiating? You're down in Florida, a state we talk about a lot, because my producer Mark, is just waiting for the opportunity for us to move the show down there. So, we may actually be, we may actually be your constituents at some point if you end up winning this congressional race. We're hearing great things about the Tampa and St. Pete area, but tell me what you're trying to do with this one, because you're there's a handful of people who are friends of mine and people that I really like and respect who are running in big. You're in a big race. Sean Parnell in Pennsylvania is in a big race. What are you trying to accomplish if and when you get into office?
So first of all, I really want to break through that messaging that's saying that, there's a stereotype of what it means to be a conservative, a stereotype of what it means to be a Republican. That mindset is dangerous. It's damaging. And ultimately, we have younger women that have really been fed talking points. The squad has really been branded and marketed to be the voice of the younger generation, and that's simply not the case. We know that as conservatives, we are ultimately suppressed through big tech. That's something that I would really like to fight alongside Congressman Matt Gaetz on, is really ensuring that the technology monopoly isn't controlling the outcome of our elections for future generations. And I think it takes people who know how to use social media, who are using it to not only run political office, but to get information, the truth out there as to what's happening in our country. Even something as simple as news, I think that people really discredited the monopoly that was in the mainstream media. And then when President Trump started his election in 2016, we all realized that there is an insane monopoly that's taking place right now in that media space. And so, I applaud people like you who are going on the front lines and really fighting it every single day, because it's a serious problem. But it's not just that. I think that there's a huge problem with human trafficking. There's a huge issue with the assault on our firearms rights. And, the Second Amendment isn't for hunting. It's not even for personal protection. It's ultimately to empower people over government. And that's really something that we need to make sure that we are defending with every bone in our body, because that's really what makes us a free country in the United States of America. So I have a long list of things that I want to do, but my first course of action will be to really help represent veterans, to help fix the disability debacle that we have with the VA rating process. And I think that having gone through it myself, having had a husband that was shot in combat, I bring a different perspective. I want to serve. I don't want to be in politics for a long time. I don't want to be here as a career politician, but I do believe that it's my time right now to help serve in the capacity that I can, and then eventually go back to my private life.
Yeah, your husband was a special operations guy.
Yeah, and he's actually currently stationed and will be retiring out of MacDill Air Force Base.
So, Anna, you are facing off against a name that is well known in Florida politics and pretty well known nationally, although I would argue not in a good way. Tell everybody about what comes next here.
So for those that might not know who I'm running against Charlie Crist. He is the fundraiser of the DCCC. He was the former Republican governor of Florida, but then he turned into an independent, and now he's a Democrat. And to be honest with you, he is the example of what politics should not be. He's been in office for longer than I've been alive, for 33 years. And he isn't even really fighting for the people that he says he represents, even in the Democrat Party. And I will say that, in politics, one of the great things about being in America is that we can have differences in ideologies. And I will respect you if you fight for your ideologies. But the difference between most people and Charlie Crist is that he's not really fighting for those ideologies. He'll tell you what really you want to hear, but he won't really fight for that. So he has an invested interest, and that's in himself. And so, yes, it is an uphill battle. In fact, our goal for this month is to raise over $1 million, which I think that we will be able to do, because again, we are an absolute machine when it comes to fundraising and really going to the people for the help. But, ultimately, it's not about just money. It's about going to the community, being relatable, telling your story, and generally wanting to make a difference. And people, regardless of party affiliation now, you can see that they don't want the Washington insiders. If you are in politics to serve your own self-interest, you're in it for the wrong reasons. And I'm hoping to bring that messaging back to not just the people of Pinellas County, but to the United States as a whole.
Guys, totally endorsed from the Freedom Hut, Anna Paulina. You should go check it out on her website. Where can people go if they want to get involved and be a part of the Paulina Express?
People can head over to voteannapaulina.com. Please donate. My average donation is $20, so every dollar counts. And then if you want to find out what I'm thinking and where I'm tracking on national issues, you can head over to any of my social media at Real Anna Paulina. But I'll tell you right now, Twitter does not like me, and I'm the candidate, and they still won't verify me. So just keep that in mind.
All right, Anna, great stuff so far. And let's come back as we're closer to Election Day, because you beating Charlie Crist, which I am really hoping you do, that's going to, between you and I'm sure Sean Parnell, where he's running against Connor Lamb, these are going to be two congressional elections that, if they go our way, are going to be shockwaves. It's going to really momentous elections. So we're rooting for you, and come back and talk to us soon.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Bye.
I didn't mention, I got a mulligan here. I didn't mention Steve Bannon's arrest today, and I meant to. I talked about it at the top of the show, so I'm glad I can get it in now. Look, everybody is entitled to the presumption of innocence. I've met Bannon a couple times, never really dealt with him. What to say here? What to say? I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a dynamic fellow. And I think the Southern District of New York may very well be timing this. I would assume, in fact, I'll go beyond may. I would assume the timing of this is meant to cause damage at some level, that the decision was made to cause damage to Trump, although Trump fired him years ago. So this is like a former White House advisor who is allegedly involved in grifting because he has this Build the Wall nonprofit, and along with some other people, including a fellow who's an Iraq War veteran who I believe is a triple amputee. And they raised $25 million, something like that. And they in the indictment, remember, Bannon's been arrested. In the indictment it says they were funneling money to themselves, and the allegation is of a classic scam involving raising money for one purpose under the guise of a nonprofit, and then living a lavish lifestyle, paying yourself a big salary, and using those funds for illicit purposes. Wire fraud involved in the charges here. Wire fraud can carry a 20-year sentence. Now, here's what I'll say about this. If this is a gray area, which it could be, let's assume financial crimes tend to be pretty black and white. Let's assume, and for example, you guys all know I like Dinesh D'Souza a lot. I think he does great work, and he admits that he committed a financial crime. It was a traffic ticket worthy financial crime, very small, but he moved money. He sent money through a straw donor to a friend in politics, and he was then punished excessively because he's a Republican and the Southern District of New York wanted to make an example of him under the Obama administration, right? But what he did is illegal, and he knows that, and he's always said that. Now he's been pardoned, so thankfully he has all of his rights restored. But financial crimes is kind of you did or you didn't, you either hid $10 million in an offshore account and didn't declare it for tax purposes, or you either did or you didn't. It's not really so the gray area here, as I see it, may be that, what is a legitimate expense? And this is where a lot of the stuff with the tax code, too, it's like, what's a business trip versus a personal trip? These are gray areas, and they're subject to interpretation. And I think that the tie goes to the citizen, so to speak, on this stuff. I think that if it's a close call, it goes to the person, that the government's going after. So we have to look and see what's going on with that. And I'm sure sweeping Bannon into this, most of the really egregious stuff that has been reported, buying like luxury yachts and paying for plastic surgery and all these things, most of that seems to be involved with one of Bannon's partners in this venture, and I haven't yet seen Bannon like he's caught red-handed on this stuff. That all said, if they bring this kind of a charge, they know that it's going to be very, very clearly they got him or they don't. The only way that I could see him fighting this in court would be if it comes into that judgment call zone on certain expenses. Is this a legitimate expense? Is it not? Do I think that there's politicization in this targeting? Yes, I do. But I also, Bannon is a savvy player. He knows the game. And if he did some shady stuff with some of this money, guys, it would be very unwise. I would hate for that to be the case. And I don't know Steve Bannon well enough at all to vouch for his character. I've met him, I think, 2 or 3 times, maybe total. I think just twice. I think I met him. So I don't know him well at all. I've spoken to him once, really. This to me though is concerning. The Southern District. It is possible. This is what I would say to you. It is possible for there to be a criminal charge like this that is somewhat politically motivated, but is still a legitimate criminal charge. Maybe they want to get you, but if you give them an opening to get you and it's legit, they've got you. So we shall see. He's pleaded not guilty, but that doesn't. You always plead not guilty, subject to plea bargain negotiation. I mean, if you plead guilty, it's because you already have a deal made, right? I mean, at this stage, he's just waiting to see. I'm wondering if he's going to fight it all the way, because I can tell you this: if he does fight a federal wire fraud charge and he loses, he's going to spend some time in prison. He's going to go away for a while. That's real. They're not. That's not a no jail time kind of a thing. They're going to send him away for a while if they can. So it's a big roll of the dice for Steve Bannon. But people that are all saying, "Oh, this ties to Trump," look, this has nothing to do with Trump. People can work for a president and later on do a bad thing, and it has nothing to do with this White House, nothing to do with this president. And if you're going to say, "Oh, well, it shows that," and I actually think that Bannon was very good for the messaging for the Trump campaign. I wanted more people like Bannon, and I've said this, involved in the campaign now. I think the campaign can feel a little sort of Goldman Sachs cookie cuttery sometimes these days. It's gotten better. It's gotten better, but in the beginning of this go round, I wasn't really liking it so much. So we'll see what ends up happening with Steve Bannon. It's just a shame. I hate when one of, look, I don't know Bannon, but I think of him as one of our team. And I hate when one of our team does something that, assuming he's guilty, and I don't assume that, but let's just, for the purpose of conversation, I hate when we give the other team a win like this, a stupid win. It wasn't necessary. It's not necessary. Shouldn't be done. Bannon, this isn't, no one's died over this. It's not some horrible, but, playing games with a nonprofit's funding, especially on an issue like this, it just, you're giving them the opening, and the libs will love being able to take Bannon down over this. I mean, that's I can't think of anything that's more exciting to them than that possibility. So we'll have to see, my friends. I'm gonna talk to some of my friends who know Bannon and see what they think of it. But there's a part of me that wants to yell, "No way, Steve Bannon did this. He's good." I just don't know. All right, roll call. Let's do it. Steven, first up. Mark is the glue that holds the show together. Got to say, he's probably my favorite Mark on radio. Steven, good choice. I got to say, I like your choice, Steven. I think you do. I think he is the best Mark on radio. Producer Mark, take a bow.
I am bowing.
There we go. He is bowing. Now to the question. Kamala DeVille is a ruthless, cruel person and is a perfect example of the typical Democrat politician. I know most Democrats are decent people with different ideas, but I just can't get to that point with Democrat politicians and bureaucrats. I can't imagine getting my most loathsome coworker fired, and these people are throwing opponents in jail. It's one thing to make some questionable personal choices, but to use your authority to literally steal someone's life is depraved. Is there any parity at all where conservatives have lied, cheated, and conspired, all to bankrupt, ostracize, and imprison somebody that they've had political disagreements with? Stephen, no, I don't think that this is an on both sides thing. If you're talking about corporate corruption, cronyism, Chamber of Commerce dictation to politicians, both sides, that Republicans are guilty on that stuff too. If you're talking about being pusillanimous, emphasis on the first part of the word, if you're talking about that, being a coward, then you're talking about Republicans. A lot of Republican politicians are wimps, absolute wimps. So, we can diagnose this. And Democrats, I'll say, there is a hardliner aspect to their ideology that I almost respect, right? Democrats don't throw their own under the bus, take care of their soldiers who are wounded on the political battlefield, so to speak. Democrats are very good that way. Republicans stink when it comes to that. We feed our own to the mob sometimes, say, "Please, mob, don't be my friend, mob," and it doesn't work. And the mob's like, "That's cool, we'll eat you next." This is because there's an absolutism that comes from a collectivist ideology. It's a complicated psychological profile you'd have to do of the collectivist Democrat mindset. But one aspect of it is that it is all run on group emotion, and therefore no one person is really responsible for any action. It's what the mob wants. This is why mobs can be so vicious and so violent sometimes, because they not only are they caught up in the frenzy of the moment, but it's what everybody was doing. The whole group was involved. And you go back and you read during the French Revolution what happened on some of those streets, what happened when they stormed the Bastille, for example. I mean, they actually literally, in the proper usage of that word, which everyone misuses, ripped people apart in the street, tore them limb from limb, ripped them open, guts inside to out. The mob did that. These were fishmongers and bakers and craftsmen, and ripped human beings apart because the mob became frenzied and no one person had accountability for it. The same mentality often applies here. If you look at the deep state cabal against Trump, they took action. Now, they weren't ripping people limb from limb, but they were trying to ruin people, to destroy people. But, Sally Yates would say that it wasn't really on her, it was on Comey. Comey would say it wasn't really on him, it was on, Strzok or Page. They would say it was on McCabe, right? No one is ever really responsible for the actions of the collectivist, of the establishment, in this case, the deep state. against any one individual. So that mentality, I think, is pervasive through Democrat circles, where when a prosecutor makes the call, even though it isn't one, eventually there's one prosecutor that but it's always the Southern District of New York decides to go after somebody, right? They take a security, a false sense of decency and morality from the consensus, which is just for Democrats, a dressed up version of the mob. The consensus is what the mob wants. Right? That's how they think of consensus. And as a result, they think that there's a power from that and also a lack of accountability from that I think cannot be avoided. I don't know if that, I hope that was somewhat clear. I hope that made some sense. We're going deep on it. Wayne, hey, Buck, I always have to laugh when someone mentions Bill Clinton's legacy. Someone once said his legacy can be summed up as nothing more than sex between the bushes. Keep doing what you're doing. Wayne, I have not heard that one. Now I get to turn to producer Mark. Of all the shows that I've given you homework to watch, have you checked out? You did watch Fear City, right?
Which one was that one?
The mob one in New York.
No, I didn't watch the mob one in New York. I watched the mob one in Montreal.
What'd you think of that?
That was great.
It was good,
until
right?
season 2.
Yeah, season 1 was
Season 2
really
was
good.
fine, but it wasn't real, which I didn't like.
Yeah, no, season 2, they go off script from what actually had happened, and it's amazing how quickly the whole thing unraveled. Bad Blood was the show.
Yes,
Yeah.
you could absolutely tell that it was fake in season 2 and real in season 1.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, everything in season 1 rings true when you're watching it, and then season 2, you're like, are they going to have Chuck Norris show up and start doing fly kicks? Like, this is absurd. Although, all due respect to Chuck Norris, his fly kicks are never absurd.
Yeah, I would have been cool with Chuck Norris, actually.
Yeah, that actually would have spruced things up a little bit. All right, more roll call. This one requested anonymity. All right, let's go. Here we see, I just want to let you know that you're one of the reasons I am alive today. I have been struggling with depression for the last half year, and it's gotten worse after I found out my dad cheated on my mom when she had cancer, and then I was cheated on shortly after that. Sometimes the only thing that got me through the day was your podcast. The COVID lockdowns has made my mental situation worse, but I really hope this will all end soon. Thank you, Buck. Shields high. Wow. First of all, and we'll just refer to you as anonymous because you requested anonymity. We're humbled that we've been able to be a source of strength and comfort for you. And just know that everyone goes through, you don't hear about it. A lot of people don't want to share it. Everyone goes through very tough times. Everyone goes through the darkness at some point in their lives. It's just a question of how open they are when you want to know about whether it's happening to somebody. Some people will say, no, it's never happened. But I think that really everybody goes through their periods, their darkness, and you've been thrown some very difficult challenges. There's no question about that. But anonymous, I will tell you that it will get better, and all you need to do is take care of yourself, take care of your relationship with God, and keep pushing forward. Keep your shield high. There are better days ahead, and if this show continues to be a source of comfort for you, it just redoubles the efforts that Mark and Nick and our whole team puts into this. This will always be, my friend, a warm welcome for you. This is always a place where you know that you can put your mind at rest. You can join us here. You are welcomed. You are loved as part of our Team Buck family, and you keep your shield high. And thank you so much for writing in. Jim, next up here. You asked if anyone believes Jill Biden when she says Joe is constantly on the phone and on the go from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. I do. He has to because he keeps forgetting who he called, what they said, and what he was doing before the call. Well, Jim, there's no shortage of having fun at Joe Biden's expense with this stuff, so I can see you're getting in on it. Esther, morning, Buck and producer Mark. Here's where I'm at this morning. Notice the difference between a Biden voter and a Trump supporter. One is an empty vote. The other is a supporter of country and freedom. One is looting and rioting. The other is celebrating success and living life. Split the country and pick a side. The Dems can have creepy Joe. Republicans get Trump. Godspeed, you two. Yeah, I would love to have a situation where, we could have the republic of republicanism in this country and not have to deal with the lib insanity, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. John, hey, Buck and producer Mark. I've been listening to you via podcast and on Freedom 91.3 here in Denver for the last several months. Love the show, especially the humor mixed in with the hard facts of what's going on in our country. When asked by Dem friends what I think of the Democratic Convention, I used the following reply. It's a Democratic Party convention. I thought it was some sort of fundraiser to get Joe Biden into a memory care facility. The most hilarious part is they start to explain it isn't a fundraiser before realizing I'm having some fun. John, glad you're having fun. Thanks for listening. Thanks to all of our Denver listeners. Shields high, team.